Okay, now we're ready for the final part of this passage, the second paragraph, Deuteronomy 30:15-20. Verse 15. See, I have set before you today life and prosperity, death and adversity. We need to imagine the visuals here. The whole of Deuteronomy depicts Moses and God's people literally standing on the brink of the entrance to the Holy Land. Moses will not be able to lead them there. As the very next chapter makes clear, chapter 31, it is Joshua, the same Hebrew name as Jesus, who will lead the people into the land. So with the land before them, Moses' speech reaches its pinnacle as he offers them a moral choice between life and prosperity on the one hand and death and adversity on the other. But get this. I think this is one of the most important parts of this passage. The you in that charge, as in I have set before you today, is singular. Moses then and now is speaking not to a group, but to each individual. You. Each one must make this choice individually. I have set before you this day life and prosperity, death and adversity. The Jewish Publication Society notes, quote, by providing a clear statement of the consequences that follow upon the responsibility of each individual to decide, this verse becomes a major source for the later Jewish doctrine of free will, as expressed in the idea that humans are free to choose between good and evil. I have set before you today life and prosperity, death and adversity. Choose life. Verse 16. If you obey the commandments of the Lord your God that I am commanding you today, by loving the Lord your God, walking in his ways, and observing his commandments, decrees, and ordinances, then you shall live and become numerous, and the Lord your God will bless you in the land that you are entering to possess. So just as in the previous verse where the covenant is set before each individual, not simply to accept but to obey, so here obeying the commandments and loving the Lord is simply another way to say obey. Quote, love, walk in his ways. In the technical language of Near Eastern treaties, love means to act loyally and to honor the commitments of the treaty. Verses 17 and 18. But if your heart turns away, and you do not hear but are led astray, to bow down to other gods and serve them, I declare to you today that you shall perish. You shall not live long in the land that you are crossing the Jordan to enter and possess. This is all pretty traditional and widely repeated language throughout Deuteronomy and indeed the rest of the Bible. The JPS commentary mentions, for instance, that the sins described in this passage are terms that echo passages in Deuteronomy 4:19 and 7:14. The commentary also points out that at the time of the writing of Deuteronomy, the phrase, you shall not long endure on the soil, would be heard by people as implying, you shall not long endure on the soil, but shall go into exile. And indeed, these warnings are echoed again in chapter 4 and in chapter 8. Okay, then verses 19 and 20. I call heaven and earth to witness against you today that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Choose life so that you and your descendants may live, loving the Lord your God, obeying him, holding fast to him, for that means life to you and length of days, so that you may live in the land that the Lord swore to give to your ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob. The medieval Jewish rabbi Nachmanides writes, quote, "I call heaven and earth to witness against you today." He says, "For a second time, it is like having witnesses sign at the end of the document." So heaven and earth are witnessing whether you, the individual, sign on to the dotted line, as it were, of obedience and love. Punchline is, of course, choose life. Nachmanides says, Moses is telling them, "Heaven and earth are my witnesses, that I have advised you to choose life so that you and your offspring may live." And as we've reached this pinnacle of Deuteronomy, this language has appeared already several times in the book. And here it sort of serves as the final capstone. Okay, so here's today's conclusion. What do you think? In Deuteronomy's second reading of the law, Moses has given God's people another or a new way to establish who and what they are. When land, king, kingdom, and temple are gone, they still have the covenant God made with them with Moses on Sinai. And now, this covenant restated and reinterpreted in Deuteronomy. Whereas before the nation fell because of the actions of king and country, now, in Deuteronomy and Moses' final words, each individual is charged to keep the covenant. Furthermore, we should also see in general, God can be known and obeyed confidently and certainly in, quote, this commandment, which is the whole book. It can be kept in the mouth through memorization and expressed in the heart through obedience. As we move next to Jesus' last words, we'll see how Jesus further interprets the meaning of this covenant and its obedience.